Hey guys, this is Kendra with Twist TV, and I'm back with another video. And I had to do this video real quick because it is our duty to just dispel some of the lies that's been told in Western society. And I'm not going to say Western because this technically is where white people redid history. And this white woman, though she's saying Western, is kind of just exposing her people. But I digress. Let's go on to hear.
Israelites were slaves in that one story in the Bible. That's it. But the reality is, it was also a hub of very advanced science, mathematics, and medicine. In fact, there's a lot that we still don't know about how advanced, how civilized that society actually was. But what we do know tells us that long before the Greeks, Egyptians had developed concepts of geometry, surgical tools, solar calendars, and in fact, many of the Greek philosophers we revere and hold up today, like Pythagoras and Plato, traveled to Egypt to study.
Wherever the hell they
But
are.
modern studies in Western civilization rarely mention this because acknowledging that much of Greek thought was influenced by African civilization kind of complicates the neat little story of European intellectual superiority. And the same goes for the African empires of Mali, Songhai, and Ethiopia. These were sophisticated states with complex systems of governance, education, and trade, and these are just a few of many that I'm naming. Timbuktu, actually, often used as a metaphor for remoteness, was actually one of the most important intellectual centers in the world during the 14th and 15th centuries. It was a central trading post on the Trans-Saharan caravan route. Its libraries held tens of thousands of manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, law, and theology, many written in Arabic, some in indigenous
languages. And was that in the continent that we now call Africa today, or was that somewhere else? That's all I'm saying.
But you don't hear about Mali or Songhai when people talk about the roots of civilization.
Now, I'm not here to talk about Africa. I wanted to get to the next point that she was going to make, but nevertheless, I digress. I'm going to let her continue.
No, the study of evolution actually traces all of our genetics back to Africa.
No, it doesn't.
And all of that
is a common misconception. She is talking about Darwin's theory. And again, the key word in that is theory. These theories have never, ever been substantiated. There is nothing that has ever corroborated that everybody's DNA came from Africa. As I say, and I say this in many videos, and I say this in many quotes or comments, there is no genetic nucleotide that can be extracted from our DNA that will give a genetic marker to any geographical location on this earth. Do you understand me? It can only tell you who you are related to. Therefore, there is no possible way at all on the face of this planet to be able to tell you that your ancestors belong to Africa. Do you understand me? There is no geographical genetic nucleotide that can be extracted from your DNA that will ever tell you what geographical location that you've come from. DNA does not work like that. It can only tell you who you are related to, not where you come from. Period.
As the word civilization in Western usage.
Also, before I get off, even if you have an ancestor in Africa, America, Europe, Guam, Sweden, that doesn't mean that's their place of origin. Why? Because humans migrate. And if we stunt ourselves at one specific location, right, we will be limiting ourselves without documentation of migration. The only way you are going to be able to determine whether or not with ocular proof, all right, with substantiated proof that your ancestor come from Africa is if there is some documented evidence, right? Marriage license, birth certificates, right? Historical records such as hieroglyphs and carved stone with your people on it. Burial grounds that you are able to dig up and check the DNA of your ancestor that's in the ground, that's in that geographical location under from the clothes they're wearing or under the ancient burial ground in which their bodies lay. If you do a DNA test with them and you find yourself to be related, then that's where you might say you could be from, if that's your grandmother and it is documented that your grandmother lived on that soil, right? So you're going to need marriage license, land allotments, birth certificate, some form of some file, first-hand source that is going to corroborate your family's lineage on that soil. You understand me? It's going to have to be corroborated with evidence that can be proven and factualized. A theory is not a fact.
Has always been kind of racially coded. Indigenous governance systems in the Americas were also, by the way, complex and democratic. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, operated under a more sophisticated model of federalism long before the United States Constitution was written. In fact, some of the founding fathers, including Benjamin Franklin, and I learned this specifically when researching for this segment, openly admired and borrowed ideas from indigenous political structures. But instead of crediting those systems, of course, the United States positioned Native people as savages in need of civilizing. Their knowledge systems, their contributions to political thought, their ecological wisdom, all erased. Western canon wanted nothing to do with it.
And it was the Westerners who wanted nothing to do with them was Slavic whites. Because in order to create a form of superiority, you then steal and you have to erase the original person who created it. Right? So white people made it seem like it was them who came up with all these political ideas. It was them who created these educational systems, when in fact they were just stealing it. So she's going to say Western, but the truth of the matter is it was white people who redid history and made it in their own likeness. It was nobody else but them who did that.
And that also makes me bring up the East. Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist philosophies go back thousands of years and developed. And the worst part of this is the West didn't necessarily interwoven with and often directly... Not that Greek philosophy or the Enlightenment weren't important, it's that they didn't develop in a vacuum. They weren't inevitable. They were deeply interwoven with and often directly borrowed from other cultures that were later dismissed as primitive or underdeveloped. And the worst part of this is the West didn't necessarily just ignore these other knowledge systems or cultures, it actively erased them. Amen. Colonizers have burned libraries,
Thank you.
Not just military bases, libraries,
right.
Not to mention hospitals and civilians.
Right.
Missionaries have intentionally and systematically destroyed temples and sacred texts. Entire languages and oral histories were wiped out in the name of civilization. This was an act.
No. And this is where I had to cut her off. It had absolutely nothing to do with civilizations. They wiped out all those cultures, histories. And you heard what she said. They burned down cathedrals and libraries to erase all of the black contribution to history, and then they re-put themselves on it. If you go to Rome, you go to Italy, all you see these huge broken fictitious statues of white gods. Never in history were there such things. You see all these different mausoleums and different cathedral and churches with white gods and white paintings, all fictitious, because they literally wiped out the truth. This is not me saying this. This is this white woman saying this. Let us speak.
Intellectual. Colonizers have burned libraries.
Let us speak.
Okay, not just military bases, libraries.
Down
not to mention
libraries. They burned down libraries, historical. They didn't just burn down libraries. They also burned down historical buildings that were record keeping. They was for record keeping, files and documents of land and marriage certificates, birth certificates, family crest and historical documentation of, and what they did not burn, they stole and then put in a vault and rewrote the book as much as they could to put themselves in history where they were not. I would let her continue to go on, but this is an each one teach one moment, and I just wanted to give y'all a little feedback showing y'all that even their own people, she says Western, but only white people did this, right, in Western society, right? So I just wanted to go well in Western society, as I said. But anyway, this is an each one teach one moment. This is Kendra with True TV. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Stay up, stay blessed. Put God first, guys, before all else. Peace out. See you later. Bye.